Paradox Junction will be the most replayable map in Black Ops 7, and I know that sounds crazy to a lot of you, but it comes down to a few key features that I think will really keep players coming back to this map. First, the map has some of the most accessible and seamless side Easter eggs we've seen in a long time. What makes these especially good is that a lot of them have overlapping rewards. That means you could stagger them throughout the game and use them to help progress as the rounds get harder, so you could save your points and salvage for other things in the game. And again, these side Easter eggs are really easy to do on the fly during your game. Another thing that I think really helps the replayability is the limited amount of special enemies. Now, I'm not saying mimics being on this map is necessarily a good thing, but the amount that spawn is really important. For example, when I get to round 30 or higher on Ashes of the Damned, I get tired of the map really quickly. That's because of the bear spam. They have too much health, and the B mechanics that they get is incredibly annoying without being able to heal up and properly plate without using all your plates. Or look at another map that's very comparable, the Tomb. It has a ridiculous amount of mimics per round. Paradox Junction is basically the complete opposite of these two maps. You usually only see at most 2 mimics per round, assuming you're playing on solo, and they have far less health, probably less than a third of what the bears have. That alone makes higher rounds feel much less exhausting. Another huge factor is how easy Pack-a-Punch is to unlock. All you have to do is pick up one item, the keys, and move the truck, and complete a soulbox style step, which takes 20 zombies to kill, and that's it. It's quick, simple, it lets players actually start progressing on their run instead of spending half of the early game unlocking basic mechanics. I think this is really important for casual runs. If the survival maps, I think if they had a little bit more depth to them, like a few side Easter eggs on each, maybe my claim that this will be the most replayable map wouldn't hold up as well. But right now, it does a really good job of simplifying the gameplay and also adding a little bit of that depth that we see in this map. I also think the main Easter egg itself is really fun to do. There's this one step though, I don't like, the piano step where you have to find all the notes around the map. I think that part is pretty garbage, but outside of that, the Easter egg is genuinely enjoyable to do. The children's game sections are actually really creative. You got to do things like Foursquare, Hopscotch, and the Bouncy Ball challenge. They're unique mechanics that make the quest feel different from the usual zombies formula, and even though sometimes these steps can be incredibly frustrating. This boss fight is also well designed in my opinion. It's not insanely difficult, but it forces you to manage your resources carefully. You have to think about when to activate my Frenzy Guard, when to use my Monkey Bombs or Casimirs, which this boss fight is the first in a very long time where it feels necessary to use your equipment. Then there's the cursed version of the boss fight, which actually adds a nice difficulty curve in my opinion. The game speeds up things like the fire tornado attacks, and the armor drops become extremely limited. Even though most players will probably have gold armor, it still adds some meaningful pressure to the game. But it still doesn't become extremely difficult because I think things like that should be reserved for those boss fights at round 100 plus. Another thing that I really appreciate about this map is the seamless transitions between the two versions of Nuketown. If this map forced you to sit through a teleportation animation every single time you move between the two areas, I think a lot of people would have quit playing pretty quickly. Being able to move around the map without constant interruptions makes the experience much smoother, and especially if you're doing the Easter egg. And I don't know if it'll be a mechanic that they'll be able to bring back to every single map in the future if they have some sort of teleportation, but I think it is a good feature for this map in particular. Now, this doesn't mean the map is perfect. The fact a map is accessible doesn't always mean it is the best. One of the biggest issues is the cost of teleporting. It is ridiculously expensive. If you're doing the Easter egg, you can spend easily 20 to 30,000 points or more in a single game on teleporting back and forth. I understand that this map has fewer doors than most zombies maps, but in the end it feels like you're actually spending more points overall on teleporting than in almost any other zombies map in COD history. I'm also not a big fan of the Wonder Weapon. Feels really inconsistent. Sometimes the Sundergat with its charge shot will wipe out an entire horde, and other times it might only kill like 1 or 2 zombies. You could say skill issue all you want, but when high round players aren't even using the Wonder Weapon, I think that's a pretty good sign that something's off about this weapon. Speaking of high rounds though, this map actually does something really interesting. For the first time in a long time, the high round strategies aren't just camping. Since Cold War and honestly a lot of Black Ops 4, And a lot of Black Ops 3, high rounds have basically been a camping simulator. But on Paradox Junction, traps are actually being used again. That's something I haven't really been able to say since probably the days of Black Ops 2, and I think it's a really good thing to see back into the gameplay loop. One other thing I might have noticed about this map, I'm not sure if this is true, but I feel like the spores, their loot was nerfed at some point. In my first ever game on Paradox Junction, I got 2 ray guns, one being on like round 2, and another being on like round 20, and then I never have gotten one since then, and I've probably played a good 15 matches since then. Again, I don't know if it was nerfed. I feel like that's insanely lucky if I've gotten 2 and then none since, but I feel like we need to address the elephant in the room. This map came out 3 months after the launch of Astra, and it is built from largely reused assets. The wonder weapon, the map layout, and the special enemies are all reused, essentially. When the map launched, the community was desperate for something and new and ambitious, so seeing reused content was definitely disappointing. And honestly, because of leaks that were spreading around before the game even launched, I kind of expected this when this map was going to come out. I think the idea of the 2 maps was good. The one being destroyed and the one being in the past before it was destroyed was a very good idea, but a very flat idea at the same time, as they both essentially play the exact same. There really isn't a different layout on either side. The only differences between the 2 sides is where you acquire parts and where you could do Easter egg steps, and that's really it. But I'll be fair here, this map actually exceeded my expectations, and that's probably because I was expecting something closer to Black Ops 2 Nuketown survival map styled. Instead we got something with a lot more depth and replayability in my opinion. With that being said, the reception might have been a little bit different if it was launched in a different way. If we were to get the exact same map that we would have gotten at launch as a bonus map alongside Ashes of the Damned, I think the community would have received it much more positively. But that's a hypothetical, and we don't live in a world of hypotheticals. And since this was the first map that was released in nearly 3 months, expectations were much higher. And because of that, the reaction ended up being very mixed about this map and probably more negative. But I think a lot of people were surprised about the depth of this map. I do think if you put this map in a vacuum, remove it from any context of any other map, or when it was released during the game, I don't think it's amazing, but I think it's alright. I think it's serviceable, but certainly disappointing in reality. But again, I do think this will end up being the most replayable map on Black Ops 7, because in short, the gameplay loop is not frustrating and it is easy to progress casually. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments what you disagree with, and I might respond to you if you have some sort of credence or you try to put some actual thought into an answer instead of being very bigoted and hateful. I appreciate you stopping by. If you stayed till the end, please drop a like, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.